Good evening, everyone. My name is Jenna Samala, and I'm honored to welcome you on behalf of the University City Community Association as its president. University City is a place where neighbors look out for one another, and that's why tonight's conversation matters. Across our region, scams, fraud, and predatory business practices are becoming more common and more harmful, often targeting seniors, renters, working families, and those already under financial pressure. These practices undermine trust and take advantage of our most vulnerable neighbors, which is why UCCA created our Senior Watch program to help take care and watch over our senior neighbors. Addressing this challenge requires leadership, accountability, and most importantly, community voices at the table. We're grateful to be joined tonight by Lawson-Remer, our San Diego County Supervisor for District 3. Supervisor Lawson-Remer has been a strong advocate for consumer protection and for holding bad actors accountable, and she has consistently shown the importance of listening directly to the people she serves. Tonight is your opportunity to share your experiences, ask questions, and help shape solutions that protect our community. Please join me in welcoming our supervisor.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. So first, I just want to thank Gemma and the University City Community Association for hosting this conversation. And I also really want to thank all of you for being here, especially on a rainy night. I know we have a lot of places to be and a lot of things to do. So thank you so much for taking the time. Let me just begin with a couple opening remarks. I want to note that I'm out talking to people in our district every day. And one of the things I hear constantly is about how people are feeling squeezed, how people are paying more and getting less, and increasingly wondering whether anyone is enforcing fair rules. I know rising costs have many causes, but a major part of the pressure that families feel comes from hidden fees on phone bills, on rent, on airline tickets. It comes from health insurance companies denying legitimate claims, from aggressive debt collection tactics, from landlords using algorithmic pricing tools that quietly drive rents higher, and from pollution that raises medical bills and lowers property values. And all of these practices may seem separate, but together, they really do function like an invisible tax. We've been calling it an unfairness tax because it makes living in San Diego so much more expensive without funding public services, fixing roads, or strengthening schools. Seniors on fixed incomes are losing hundreds of dollars to junk fees and overdraft charges. Service members are steered into abusive loans. Families take on medical debt when insurers delay or deny care they're entitled to. Honest businesses are undercut by competitors who cheat. And these harms are not random. They are not accidental. After the 2008 financial crisis, Congress created federal watchdog agencies to prevent exactly this kind of corporate abuse. The CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, was built to stand up to big banks and predatory lenders so families would never again be left holding the bag while big corporations walked away with big profits. But President Trump is now dismantling these exact protections. His administration gutted the CFPB, slowed investigations, dropped enforcement actions against companies engaged in junk fees, predatory lending, and financial misconduct. And when this kind of federal oversight retreats, the consequences do not hit Washington. These consequences mean higher costs and weakened protections here in San Diego County. Luckily, the laws already exist to stop these practices. What's missing is more enforcement. State agencies must prioritize large statewide cases. Our district attorney's office does critical work, especially on serious criminal matters, and they've been undertaking Herculean efforts to meet the full volume and importance of this responsibility. City attorneys, especially the city attorney of the city of San Diego, and legal aid organizations like Legal Aid, who's here with us today, have also been working incredibly hard fighting for our residents, our consumers, and individuals who've been unfairly targeted. but they are also limited in capacity. But meanwhile, corporate misconduct has grown more sophisticated. AI-generated scams, hidden arbitration clauses, and shell companies designed to hide who's really responsible. So harm continues, not because it's legal, but because no public agency has the capacity to do it all. And so that's where the county comes in. In 2021, California passed SB 461, which gave large counties like San Diego County the authority to bring civil enforcement actions on behalf of the people. The people, that's you. And we now have that authority. Los Angeles has used this authority. Santa Clara has used this authority. Counties up and down the state have established civil enforcement divisions to protect the people. But San Diego is the only major county that has not yet stepped into this role. That has to change. So we are proposing the creation of a Consumer Fairness and Public Protection Unit within our County Council's office. Its role will be to enforce laws already in the books, stop illegal practices, recover money for residents who are harmed, and deter repeat misconduct. This is civil enforcement, not criminal prosecution. It does not create new regulations. It uses law to make sure the rules apply evenly to everyone. And I want to address the question I know many people have been asking. How are we going to pay for this? This is one of the best parts. The CFPP unit will use existing restricted consumer protection settlement funds. This is funds that the county has already secured in previous lawsuits against corporations that broke the law. These dollars were recovered specifically for consumer protection and enforcement. And over time, penalties and recoveries from cases the unit takes on will sustain this work. So that means no new taxes and no reductions to other county programs. This program is going to be paid for entirely out of an existing pot of money that's been won by the county and set aside just for this purpose. So this accountability is funded by our prior work fighting for corporate accountability. The unit is going to focus us on the practices directly raising costs here at home. This includes environmental pollution coming from the Tijuana River Valley that's been closing our beaches and making people sick, forever chemical contamination, bad faith health insurance companies, predatory lending, unlawful debt collection, housing and tenant fraud, and other scams. These are the kinds of things that determine whether families stay housed, whether small businesses can compete fairly, and whether people can afford to remain in this region. And when illegal fees and deceptive practices drain household budgets, these costs often surface later in our county systems, in emergency housing, public assistance, healthcare, and legal aid. So stopping harm early prevents these costs from landing later while protecting honest businesses and honest consumers that follow the rules. But tonight is not mostly about explaining a proposal, it's also about listening. I want to hear where you are seeing unfair and deceptive and fraudulent cheating practices that have been taking advantage of you and the people you love in our community. Where are people you know falling through the cracks, and what would it look like for our county to be a better partner in enforcing rules, especially when federal oversight is being rolled back? So tonight's panel brings together people who see this issue from different angles. We have academics, we have advocates, we have lawyers, we have local government officials, we have legal services here on the ground. And they're here to share what they're seeing in San Diego and across California and what's missing in the current enforcement landscape. So we're going to take a moment to introduce our panelists. Then we're going to open with a question for our panelists to answer. And I just want to say, before I introduce them, I am so honored to have them all here. This is just a really extraordinary group. After we hear from our panelists, we will then open the floor for questions from the audience. Let me explain a little bit about how this is going to work. Team, if you have a card, raise your hand. Okay, we've got Joy in the back with a card. You've got Spencer with cards. Okay, we've got at least 2 folks. Raise your hand. Someone else? Okay, so what's going to happen is we are going to walk around, and if you have a question, You will raise your hand and someone on our team will bring you a card so you can write your question on the card, and then you will raise your hand and make sure it gets collected so your question can get asked. So again, raise your hand, team, if you have a card. Raise it, raise it. They're in the back. Joy, raise your hand. Spencer, raise your hand. If you have questions over the course of the panel and you want to ask a question or say something that's on your mind, please raise your hand so we can get your question and make sure it gets asked. And they'll come and bring you a card and come back and get it. And if you want to shout out and to be identified by name, go ahead and put your name on the card. If you don't, you can leave it blank. You're not required. If you feel for whatever reason that you don't want to identify yourself, that's fine too. But if you want to, and you want your question to be given to you directly, and you should get a shout out, then please do put your name on the card. Does this all make sense? Okay, great. That is how we're going to make sure we get everyone's questions answered. And I really hope you all, if you don't have questions, even if you have a story to share, something that happened to you that you want to make sure is prioritized, it would really be great to hear that as well. So thank you so much. So let me take a moment to introduce our panelists. I'll start with Allison. Allison Snow is, Allison, raise your hand. Hi, Allison. She wears many hats. She is a law professor at the University of San Diego School of Law, and she's also the mayor of Lemon Grove. And she has collaborated with the White House, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation, the U.S. Department of Energy, and the Federal Trade Commission on consumer and housing issues. She's a frequent speaker at the National Consumer Law Center. She spent more than a decade at the Legal Aid Society of San Diego, fighting for working families and tenants. We then have Israel Hernandez from AARP. Israel, raise your hand. He is the Associate Director of Advocacy and Community Engagement at AARP California, where he leads efforts to strengthen age-friendly initiatives and build communities that support people of all ages. He focuses on advocacy partnerships and community engagements and inclusive environments, and he brings a background in community outreach and represents AARP in public forums like this one. Andrea Ross. Thank you, Andrea. First of all, I love you all, but I particularly want to thank Andrea because she's from Los Angeles, and she is here to lend her expertise. She is the Principal Deputy County Counsel of Los Angeles County. She is a seasoned litigator with 30 years of experience, including the past 2 decades with the Los Angeles County Counsel's Office, where she serves as the Principal Deputy in the Affirmative Litigation and Consumer Protection Division. She handles complex, high-profile matters, serving as lead counsel in ongoing opioid litigation against pharmacy benefit managers, co-leading major cases against Pepsi and Coca-Cola for alleged false advertising and plastic pollution, and co-leading the county's lawsuit against an investor-owned utility arising from the Eaton fire. We would like to do all of those kinds of things here. So huge credit and huge shout out. She also leads consumer privacy investigations and public health litigation, and has secured a $133 million lead paint abatement settlement for the County of Los Angeles. Which is amazing. Thank you. Okay, Joanne Francisca, she is with the Legal Aid Society of San Diego. She's their Chief Executive Officer and Executive Director. She's been there for 11 years. Starting as staff attorney, managing attorney, chief operating officer. She oversees daily operations. She leads the Legal Aid Society's culture and vision. And previously, she had been a law firm partner, representing plaintiffs in workplace sexual harassment and medical malpractice matters. And then finally, Jerry Singleton. This is Jerry. He is the founder and managing partner of Singleton & Schreiber, a national firm with more than 80 attorneys and 400 employees across the county, actually across the country. A former federal trial attorney with Federal Defender of San Diego County, he is widely recognized as a leading expert in wildfire litigation, having represented over 20,000 fire victims in more than 30 wildfires and recovered over $3 billion on their behalf. He serves in key appointed leadership roles, including liaison counsel in major fire cases, and on the oversight committee of the $13.5 billion Fire Victim Trust. He also has recently expanded his practice in environmental and toxic tort litigation nationwide. So, I'm really looking forward to hearing from all our panelists. Just going over the ground rules, please be respectful. People have different experiences and viewpoints. If you have questions, please get a card and write it down. Make sure your card gets collected. If we don't get to your question tonight, please know your feedback and questions will absolutely be taken by myself and my team, because we're really in the process right now of shaping how this unit's going to operate and what the priorities are going to be. So thank you all again for being here, and without further delay, we will jump right into our first question for our panel, for our really extraordinary panel that I'm so excited to listen to. And actually, before I ask these questions, I just want to note, I was an academic for a really long time. I'm an attorney by training, and then later I got my PhD. So I spent a lot of time at panels, and I love them. And I always learn something, and I don't get to go to enough panels with really smart people anymore, so I am so excited to be here and just sit down and be quiet and listen to all these really smart people talk. So thank you for that. So just to kick us off, and I think we'll start with Jerry and kind of go down the row. From your perspective, so this is the question, and y'all I know can talk a long time, so let's try to not talk too much. From your perspective, what are you seeing in terms of the harms that go unaddressed, and where are you seeing the biggest gaps between the laws that exist and the protections people actually experience?
So I think the biggest issue in terms of harms that go unaddressed, to me, there are two things. Number one is the environmental and the toxicity, the toxins that are in the air, in the water. You have things like Imperial Beach. All of us are familiar with that. But even more fundamentally, we are starting to learn so much more about toxins that are in water, that are in soil, things like that. So I think that a unit like this addresses a key gap, because right now you have, for example, the district attorney's office, which primarily prosecutes people accused of crimes. And then you have the county council, which represents the county, defends, does very important work, but you don't have that affirmative unit. And while private attorneys can do certain things, we can't, unless we're retained, represent the county. And so a unit like this, to me, is exactly what's missing. It can go out, it can pursue these very important cases, it can recover not just things like environmental damages, but also any type of scams, very common, wrongful fees, things like that. And to me, the nice thing about a unit like this is it can do two different things. One, it can represent the county on its own, it can handle cases, and then when outside expertise is needed, it can bring an outside counsel, partner with them, and bring even bigger cases. So that's why I think something like this would be so important.
I think our consumer protection laws are actually pretty robust, to be honest. I think our gap is really in not enough people doing this work. The more people, the better. There's more than enough to go around. As I always say, people that can learn to use people to make a profit could take that energy and that intelligence and use it for good. We would have a perfect society, right? But these people are always one step ahead, and anything they can do to profit for themselves, they'll do at the harm to other people. So the more of us out there, the better. There's more than enough work to share. We've been up and running since 2018, and in that time, we've gotten numerous, tens upon tens injunctive relief for the state to stop behaviors. We've gotten over $800 million in civil penalties and in damages. That hurts businesses, right? Publicly being shamed, having injunctive relief that they can't do certain behavior in the state of California, and then paying a penalty for doing such bad behavior. It gets noticed. I think when consumers bring individual cases, they can get paid off. penny to the dollar, and it isn't thought about, and it isn't noticed. But us doing this work, I do think gets noticed and makes a difference and does change behavior.
For those of you who don't, know much about legal aid, we're a nonprofit law firm. We practice in the areas of civil law that most fundamentally affect a person's well-being. We have over 12 different practice areas, and so when I was trying to narrow it down to which are the most important prevalent issues that we're seeing, it was really hard. I have staff here from that work in housing, that work in protection, fair housing, health, and what we have a lot of overlapping issues. I started writing them down and just kept going page after page after page. But student loans, auto-related issues, solar, predatory lending, case energy scams that I know Mayor Snow worked on when she was with us, debt consolidation, foreclosure, rescue scams, home improvement scams, mechanics lien foreclosure, romance scams, people impersonating the IRS and the FBI. We recently had a client who was duped into believing that the scammers were the IRS and that she was helping them by giving them money to go after the scammers and catch them. In terms of housing, the security deposit, wrongful withholdings, illegal rent increases, habitability, landlords not fixing units, not making necessary repairs, illegal rental units, in the substantial remodels, unlawful evictions, our side payments, junk fees is a big thing that's coming up now. Our fair housing team is seeing things, unlawful practices in tenant screenings, source of income discrimination. At this point, things that are based off of disparate impact are health agencies, balance billing, medical credit cards, hospitals not meeting the charity care requirement. So we see all of these things, and the people that we serve are really one legal issue, one financial problem away from homelessness. So these problems really do affect people's financial security, their health, their housing security, and the thing that we see most often, the problem that I hear, the complaint I hear most often is the lack of enforcement, and it's not a lack of willpower, it's a lack of resources, it's a lack of enforcement. And I think, to make a more coordinated effort. But, the things that I hear from clients, it's not complaints about the services that we're providing. It's complaints that there are certain issues because of our limited resources that we can't take anymore. Or there's a limit to the services that we can provide, and they need us to file an affirmative case on their behalf, and we don't have the resources to do that. So, I think those are the gaps that we're seeing.
So I think that bad businesses doing bad things should be held accountable. And when businesses come in and take your money, if you were dealing with a regular petty thief and someone came and stole $35 out of your wallet, you could go up to a sheriff or a police officer and say, that guy stole my money, and they would do something about it. I would have people whose identity was stolen. We would go down to the police department, and their identity was stolen to get a loan for over $144,000, true story. Their identity was stolen for $144,000, and the police officer wouldn't take the report because they have too many identity theft cases. You have to make it cost money to bad businesses. They understand dollars and cents. And unfortunately, the approach that we've had as far as county services go, is that we're leaving all enforcement in the hands of the district attorney's office. And the district attorney, by its nature, is more interested in criminal activity than it is in what they deem civil issues. So what we need is to make crime not pay. We need to make criminals pay. And so in order for us to be able to accomplish this, we need a department that is focused on making the bad people pay. And until we do that, there will be no curbing the behaviors. Like, it's just we're encouraging it, we're fostering it. You can have all the best laws on the books, and California has some of the strongest consumer protections in the entire nation. But without enforcement, they're utterly useless. And each and every one of us is a consumer. Each and every one of us has had to fight a late fee. Each and every one of us has probably had to take out a student loan. Each and every one of us has had to fight for identity theft issues. How many of us have ever had our credit card stolen? You had to cancel all your credit cards. And it's just a nightmare to be able to do that. It takes someone a hot second to steal your identity, and it takes you sometimes years to clear your good name. We need to make it unprofitable for these companies to do this to our people. And so I think that this is a commitment by the county. I told Tara, if I had a magic wand and I could wish something into being, this is my wish. A consumer protection bureau that fights for the citizens, fights for the people that the county is designed to protect.
Well, at AARP, we're deeply concerned about the impact that fraud and scams have on older adults. In terms of, answering your question on, the gap, I would say the scale and magnitude of fraud and scams and the ability for enforcement, for education, for outreach to keep up with that. I don't know that I think I'm pulling the mic to its extent here. I don't know that we appreciate enough that we're essentially living in our generation's version of the Industrial Revolution with the dawn of things like AI, machine learning, crypto. We're also concerned about crypto and the proliferation of scams through crypto. In 2024, the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, the IC3, reported that there were $16 billion lost to fraud and scams. And in 2024, in San Diego, $130 million were lost to fraud and scams from older adults. So for us, we're deeply concerned that older adults are grossly overrepresented when it comes to fraud and scams. And I also want to dispel that there is a stigma that, well, is it because this person is gullible? No, not at all. Any person can be gullible. It's because there's a thought out there that these folks have a ton of income, and some do, and some don't. And whether you're being defrauded for $500 or your life savings of $20,000, of which there's plenty of stories of this from throughout the county, as was mentioned earlier, that's detrimental to an older adult, especially someone on a fixed income, especially when we know there's data in San Diego that shows for older adults, they are the fastest growing group of the unhoused. And we get calls from people at our information center that say, I'm on $500 of a budget. I'm concerned that I may go unhoused. So in terms of the gap, the ability to enforce, outreach, education, and I think and we would support any effort that would increase, and we're doing that at the federal level with the GUARD Act, bipartisan bill that would strengthen protections, and then we're also interested in having conversations with local jurisdictions about ordinances around cryptocurrency kiosks, which are becoming a growing flashpoint for fraud as well. People don't understand these technologies, not just older adults. I don't understand crypto in a detailed way. So the magnitude, the scale, more education, more outreach, and more collaboration.
Thank you all for some very helpful and informative introductory comments. I always have more questions, but let's see if our audience has questions yet. Garrett?
Hello, everybody. Just a quick reminder, if you got a question, remember to raise your hand and our team members will bring you a card. Our first question is from Barbara G. Barbara asks, aren't you duplicating what Summer Steffen's department does?
Okay, anyone interested in taking that question? I think Allison, okay.
So I'll start anecdotally. So there was a scam. One gentleman used a loan program that had very few guardrails on it, and all the documents were signed using DocuSign. The company became aware that this guy was committing fraud, and they still accepted the loans, still paid him the money, then took these loans where you pay for the loans instead of like monthly payments, you pay for it through your property taxes. So all of a sudden you'd see this big bill on your property taxes, and you're like, what does this have to do with me? Why did my property taxes go up so high? Then you go down to the assessor's office and you're like, what's this about? And they're like, it's for, did you get solar? And they're like, I don't have solar. And so it was this big fraud scheme. So eventually the loan servicer realizes that this scheme is happening. It's still charging the homeowners and taking their money, doesn't stop putting a lien on their property, but they call the cops basically on themselves. So they call the district attorney's office and say, hey, this guy is committing fraud. He's given all these fraudulent contracts to us where he's the one that's signing it and not the homeowners. So the district attorney's office went after the guy who was doing the fraudulent contracts, but did not one thing, not $1 was recovered to the 44 homeowners who lost over $2.1 million that day, and then had interest and fees and taxes, a super priority lien attached to their homes. Not 1 cent of relief was recovered by the district attorney's office for those individuals. Instead, that company got to keep those liens against the home, and every single year since has added an assessment to collect the loan from people where they know it's fraud. That is crazy, right? That is crazy. That's what we're talking about when there is not duplication, because the district attorney sees their avenue as very narrow. We're gonna go after the criminal because we wanna put that criminal in jail. When it's a company, who are you gonna put in jail? And so they kind of give up and they say, that's not our problem. So then they come to nonprofit legal services and say, hey, we've got a bunch of people who are victims, can you help them out? And we're like, one at a time, you guys could do this with a single demand letter, probably send it over to the entity that's charging this money and get it taken care of. You could do injunctive relief and get the county to stop collecting taxes when they know these accounts are fraudulent. You could do all these things, but you're not doing it because you don't see that as criminal activity. So when I talk about there's a gap and the district attorney's office isn't handling these things, that's what we're talking about. And the county, if they have a civil department, would be so powerful to stop these kind of things, because I will tell you, at Legal Aid, I see my Mika Wilbur here, who's the head of the Consumer Protection Division. She looks good. I look tired, but she looks good. Yeah, raise your hand, stand up, Mika. She's amazing. And next to her, we can't miss Amalia either. This is Amalia. She runs the fair housing program over there. That's my girl too. So they're doing absolutely incredible work. But if you could have one attorney handling one case for the county, or you could have 1 or 2 legal aid attorneys trying to handle 44 cases, hire expert witness in each of those 44 cases, have to organize everything, get everything done, take the litigation. These cases take 4 to 5 years. It is too much burden on our Legal Aid Society of San Diego to be able to carry those things. It's too much for the legal clinics of the University of San Diego to carry these things. But the county could do it with a much sharper knife and get directly to the heart of the problem. And so they have complementary, the district attorney's office, we still need them. We still need them to pursue them as criminals. And gosh, I wish some of these companies could go to jail. And then we need them to pay. We need to collect money from the bad people, and that's the gap that's not happening. We see it every once in a while in some of these cases, which is the source of the funding. And I will tell you, when I ran the consumer protection at Legal Aid Society of San Diego, when the bad guys paid, it helped fund my program. It's a good model. It makes sense. And I think that the two need to work in tandem.
I was just going to say it's about using the right tool for the specific issue. And as you said, the district attorney's office has an incredibly important job. They do a very good job. They're out there prosecuting criminals. However, you also have a civil system, and that is not something where the district attorney's office does a great deal of work, and that's by design. They are there to prosecute people accused of crimes. The whole idea here is that there is this whole other area that is not being addressed, and this type of unit is exactly the tool you need to address it.
Thank you both. That was very interesting and helpful. Allison, you're a professor at USD, right? So I want to note one of the things that really jumped out at me when I was looking across the state of California at the way that consumer protection divisions have been stood up in other counties is that the city/county of San Francisco has an amazing program where some of their best and brightest future employees and future attorneys come straight from a legal clinic. They have a partnership with Yale Law, and Yale does a lot of the students there do a lot of the creative work on kind of putting together the litigation. So once this is off the ground, I would love to have a conversation with Allison about how we could have that kind of partnership here with USD to replicate the kind of model that has been just so wildly successful in San Francisco with the Yale Law Clinic. So thank you, Allison. And next question.
Okay, next question is from Dave Lehman. Dave is asking, as a former TV reporter, I keep wondering why there has been no successful crackdown through legislative efforts or federal enforcement on these scams.
So the question is, why has there been no successful crackdown on all these scams? It's a big question. Anyone want to try to tackle that? Can you just clarify if there's any additional information in that question?
It is stated.
Okay. So let me try to summarize. I think if I try to grab the spirit of that is, we all know that there's all these terrible scams out there, right? I mean, I think we all get them now, right? Sorry if you've called me lately, I can't answer my phone because 3/4 of the calls are from someone saying that I've been pre-approved for a $3,700,000 loan that I didn't apply for, right? So I feel like most of you have had a similar set of experiences. It's not just me, it's everybody. So it sounds to me like the question is, why hasn't there been some kind of more successful effort to crack down? And maybe we can answer that in a more narrow way, which is to say, what could we do in San Diego County as we design this consumer fairness and public protection unit to be effective in cracking down on these kinds of scams? And I feel like I'd love to lean on our principal legal counsel from Los Angeles who can share some lessons learned, as we look to stand this up. How can we design this in a way to really be effective in cracking down on these scams?
The number one problem with these scams that are going on is you need a company or a person, right? Most of these scams, especially ones over the phone or texts, how do you get to that person that is doing it, the company that's doing it? Are they viable? Can California touch them? Are they even in the United States? So that's a big problem with scams. But the ones that we learn about, we have a Department of Consumer Business Affairs, DCBA. They get consumer complaints all the time. We get complaints from constituents from our Board of Supervisors. And we'll see a theme or a specific party that is complained about. And then we do our research into, where are they located, what is this company, what are they doing, is this true? And then, we will investigate, and then we then pursue. But, like I said from the beginning, these people are smart, they're intelligent, and they continue to shift and bob and get ahead of you. It's hard, it's whack-a-mole, but you just gotta keep doing it and you don't stop. But more of us, again, it is the best answer. The more of us that can get the complaints, go through them, and handle them. And because there is more than enough for everyone to share.
No.
Anyone else have any thoughts to add on how we stand this up in a way that's really effective?
Thank you for the.
I don't know if that was working here.
Just also wanted to add, and I hope I didn't understate, at my first answer, that we know from working with local partners, hearing from folks like the FBI, Elder Justice Task Force, that this issue is severely underreported. So if the issue is being underreported, the federal authorities and other folks who enforce this don't necessarily always know all the characteristics of the scams. As I mentioned before, the scams evolve. And so the shame, the guilt associated with reporting, as well as the reality for many of these folks that they're not going to get their money back. And in most cases, they won't. And so once that gets out and folks know that, or believe that to be true, they see no merit in reporting it. And so that's a key factor as well.
Okay, next question.
Say something about that?
No, if you have a question, as I explained in the ground rules in the beginning, we want to make sure everyone's voice is heard equally. That's one of the most important values we bring to these kinds of forums. So please do go ahead and submit a card so you could be in the queue with everybody else. Go ahead.
Okay, the next question is anonymous. It reads, I'm a Marine veteran, and my car dealer spiked my interest rate after I already signed. When I tried to complain, I was told I couldn't take them to court due to a buried arbitration clause. Are you going to be able to look at patterns like this and go after dealers that target service members?
I'm a Marine veteran. I got a loan. My interest rate went through the roof after I signed it, and I couldn't do anything about it because there was a hidden arbitration clause. Is this the kind of thing we can tackle?
Absolutely, because we don't sign the contracts, we are not bound by an arbitration clause, so we can bring it on behalf of consumers against the company.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm fired up for that. Go ahead.
Okay, another anonymous question. We've all seen the Trump administration dismantle the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and pull back enforcement against big banks and scam operators. What has that done to the overall workload for other enforcement entities? What can a local unit realistically do when the federal government is pulling in the opposite direction?
So just to kind of summarize, what's happened from the experience of all you guys who've been leading this fight for so long, with the CFPB being completely gutted, totally dismantled, the Trump administration just taking its hands off the wheels on protecting consumers and fighting for people like us. What have you seen in terms of increased work, but also realistically, what can a local government do in that situation?
Well, I think it underscores the need for a unit like this because the feds are no longer in the space to any real appreciable degree, which is very unfortunate. But there are tools under California law, like for example 17200, other laws that are available that address these precise issues. And so to me, that really demonstrates why a unit like this is so important at this time.
Okay.
I think timing-wise, this is a critical time when we're seeing sort of disinvestment by the federal government in enforcement actions, and we know that for bad actors, this is a risk-reward analysis, right? I mean, at this point, the crime pays because there's no enforcement, so it's incumbent on the private sector, the nonprofit sector, local state governments to come together to collaborate, to share information about how these things are, again, constantly evolving. Whack-a-mole took the words right out of my mouth. And to make sure that there are enforcement actions. Otherwise, it's going to get worse.
So I had a weird journey to where I ended up now. So back in 2008, I was working at a large law firm, and I was just came back from maternity leave, and we were in the middle of the subprime mortgage crisis. And one of our next clients there was going to be a corporate level executive at Countrywide. If you lived during that time period, you know that that's a bad word. And so it was come to Jesus moment for me, and I was like, I should be helping the people that were losing their homes and not this guy. But how did we get to that point? There were people on the ground, everybody's like, this is a bubble. This doesn't make any sense. The prices that we're charging for houses doesn't correspond to anybody's income levels that are buying the houses. None of this makes sense. And we were sounding the alarm. So I left Big Law, went over to Legal Aid Society of San Diego and did that. Just tried to help save people's homes during this time period. But during this time period, we had no Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. We only had the Federal Trade Commission. And the Federal Trade Commission saw their lane as helping and regulating businesses. They did not see themselves as protectors of the average everyday consumer. And again, every single one of us is a consumer. And so we were all left out. When I brought these issues to the FTC and I said, hey, look, this is bad, everybody can see it's bad, why aren't you doing anything? They said, we need more data. Who's gonna collect the data? And the Legal Aid Society, we would come with our data and they would say it's anecdotal. We need data. And so by the time we were able to create and launch the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, it was like candy. All this data that we've been asking for, they finally were collecting, and they weren't just collecting it for their own purposes. They made it accessible to everybody. They put all the bad actors and the complaints and everything, they put it on their website. And so when you had to go in, you had to prove pattern and practice of bad behavior, and you're just one little person, and how are you gonna get access to that? As a legal aid attorney, all of a sudden you're like, let me go to the CFPB website. They have a present for me there. And so it was amazing. So when I talk about magic wands, I know what this is capable of becoming. And for many years, we have lived in a world where we take for granted its existence. We forgot the period of time back in 2008 when there was no one watching out for the consumer. So it is imperative that we try to backfill what the federal government is trying to take away again. We cannot let these consumer protections dissipate and fade away. We have to fight for them. And I'm not giving up on the fight on the federal level. We've got to be there. We've got to get a hold of our legislators. We've got to tell them it's critical. And we have to explain why it's critical and how we can use it. But here in the county level, we absolutely need this. Like, this is what we have to do to fill these gaps, or otherwise we will be in the same predicament that we found ourselves in 2008, and it was a miserable time for America.
Thank you. Those were some really eloquent answers. And let me just note, as we go about launching this unit, there's going to be a citizens advisory panel that's going to be part of visioning and putting together some of the strategy and thinking about how to prioritize and how to structure and also how to hire our first director. So I'm really hoping all of you, with all of your extremely good ideas and a lot of insight and a lot of experience, can be part of that process so that we can learn from lessons learned and take the best of what we learned in 2008 and bring it here to San Diego County. Thank you. Garrett.
Yes. Brendan McHugh asks, how will the proposed unit collaborate with the existing consumer protection unit in the DA's office and prosecutors' offices around the state?
Great.
With LA County, when our division was created, one of the first things we did do was reach out to the DA. So how Business and Professions Code 17200, which is the Unfair Business Practices Act of California, originally it was county councils had to get approval from the DA to bring those cases. And we had been doing that prior to the creation of our unit. Then once our unit was created, we then, and the law changed and took out that having to go to, because we were given the authority to do these cases on our own. And we met with the DA, we talked things out, and it was a rocky start. The DA initially was against our unit being created, but we just managed the relationship. We have brought cases together with our DA. We bring cases with our California AG's office. We bring cases with other jurisdictions, including the County of San Diego. So it is a very collaborative field. It's not one against the other, as I say it every time. There's more than enough work for everyone, and the more partners, the better it is. And the more we work together, the better it is. And the DA knows that. And so we have worked jointly on civil cases with the DA. We have been behind them working on the case. We let them handle the criminal portion first, and we'll follow up behind them with the civil portion. So it's a working relationship, and it can be worked out just fine.
And I think it's important to also think about the California Attorney General, which also has a very important unit that's involved here as well. And it's one of those things, it's like when we have private suits that involve many different plaintiffs. An example is the Eaton fire in Los Angeles, where we represent individuals, the county is also a plaintiff, and what you do is you work collaboratively to achieve the best outcome for everyone, and I'm confident the unit will be able to work with the San Diego District Attorney's Office.
Thank you. I just want to note also one of something I'm really excited about is we recently hired a new county counsel coming from the AG's office, the California Attorney General's office, and he's so fired up about this unit because he's definitely knows how much the AG's work could benefit from more local partners, and really looking forward to bridging those relationships and building those partnerships between the statewide litigation and our local litigation. So if you have an opportunity to meet Damon, please give him a warm welcome, but I think we're really lucky to have him to help lead this and birth this new unit. So, Garrett.
Holly Lamb asks, can you walk me through the investigation workflow for how the unit will process cases? Will the unit help provide support or guidance to consumers pursuing their own remedies, like small claims filings, process serving, or coordinating with other agencies?
I think some of those questions aren't fully worked out in terms of how this unit's going to function. Obviously, first we have to pass the policy at the board, and then we're going to hire a director who's going to then hire staff and build up a lot of those systems. But I think it's still probably worth hearing from our panelists if they have opinions on best practices, because I'm sure we will be asking them to be on our working group to advise on how to set this up. So if you have thoughts on an answer to that question, please feel free.
We have to be mindful that our client is the Board of Supervisors at the County of LA. And so we have to not cross that line where consumers feel that we are a legal resource, that we give advice to them, because we cannot. Our client is the Board of Supervisors of the County of LA, no one else. So yes, we will give them resources to go to. We'll connect them with the right people, but we couldn't represent, we can't represent anyone in small claims court, but again, we have the DCBA, Department of Consumer Business Affairs. They walk people through things like that. They show them how to navigate the court website for small claims. But the county counsel's office we are the legal counsel for the County of Los Angeles. So it's a fine one.
So that's Los Angeles, how you all handle it. Thoughts on San Diego, or how you would like to see this work here?
Yeah, I mean, I think, with a lot of different systems, we've seen, again, the collaborative approach really work, where, you're pulling together limited resources, you're leaning on each partner's strength, and, we have people up here who can represent individuals, like legal. And so, a multifaceted approach is usually what's needed when you're talking about complex problems. We need education, we need outreach, we have self-help clinics that can guide people through some of the court processes. We have individual representation. So I think the more resources that we have, the better, and so that we can each lean into our strengths and make the best use of them.
Oh, go ahead. No, please.
Currently, we have a program where law enforcement and legal services have meetings, and we get together and talk about consumer trends that we're seeing. So it's a good opportunity to continue those kind of programs where we're sharing what we're seeing. Oftentimes, legal services are the canaries in the coal mine. We'll see the problems before they become really big problems, and we can alert the county to those kinds of problems. And then I love, because you really need somebody who can go after a company at large. So an individual can't get injunctive relief to stop an entire bad business practice that somebody is doing across the board. They can just get them to stop doing it to them. So the county comes in and does that role, and then the people are given the opportunity to come to other legal services to be able to assist with their individual issues. The other part of this is that sometimes we see it in class actions all the time, where we see them a lot. Speaking of car dealerships, so car dealerships cannot not charge you too much for registration and license fees. I'm like, dude, I can always get you out of a bad car contract because they cannot help themselves. So they cannot charge you more than the state rates for registration and license fees. But sometimes it's only $50. Are you gonna file a lawsuit over $50? Like people will be like, are you filing over $50? Well, in the aggregate, it makes money for them. In the aggregate, they're making $15,000 extra a year on that $50 charge that they're overcharging you on. And so this is one of the things where individually you can go and get your $50 back, or you could use the county council to go in and stop an unfair business practice. And so I think that there's different ways that we can complement those efforts, that we can coordinate and work between legal services, the private bar, and county council, and I think as a team we'll be formidable.
Thank you. I want to be respectful of our panelists. I promised we would stay here all night. So we'll have one last question. I know there's probably a couple we didn't get to, but we'll do one last question. And then I'll give the panelists a chance to say any closing remarks. And then if your question didn't get answered, I'll stick around. Hopefully a couple of them will stick around as well. Thank you.
Brady Finta asks, would the Civil Consumer Protection Unit you're proposing eventually be self-funded? If not, how will it be funded once this current pot of money is exhausted?
This is a question I can answer. this is my part of the job. Yeah, so right now we're definitely anticipating it'll be self-funded, and I think we have a lot of experience to speak to that. But that's certainly the anticipation. There's pretty significant resources at the county now that are set aside really only for this purpose and can't be used for anything except this. So I think it's high time that we use those funds to get to work fighting for consumers and people in San Diego County and standing up to these scam artists. But once that work is rolling and off the ground and we got an amazing team hired, I think they're going to be winning cases and winning money and bringing it back into the county to self-fund the work and make it self-sustaining. So, yes, please.
Just one other point on that. If you look at where these types of things have been done in other parts of the country, not only is it self-sustaining, but it's also revenue generating. And I think that is a very important thing, particularly when you're talking about San Diego County, which unfortunately has structural budget deficits. And so when you look at the opportunity to have a unit that is not just self-sustaining and assisting the members of the community, but it's also revenue generating, it really is a win-win.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here tonight. And let me just ask our panelists if you have any final closing remarks, really anything on your mind you want to share, any of your own personal experiences, what has motivated you to spend your life fighting for consumers and fighting for the little guy who's constantly getting the short end of the stick, or any big lessons you learned in the course of your work that you hope we take to heart as we stand this unit up in San Diego County, or really anything else you'd like to share.
I've said this before, but without enforcement action, there's a lot of great laws, but without enforcement action, they're words on paper, and that's really all they are. And I think enforcement also is a matter of equity. We see the most vulnerable residents being targeted through these scams. That's not an accident. That's not coincidence. So I think enforcement is really necessary again to promote stability in health, in housing, in finance. I think it's just really necessary that we come together and make a concerted effort to do that.
In the preamble to the legislation on the federal level that talks about the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, the preamble discusses the reasons why the legislature back then decided to pass that. And it was to help families not be stressed out. Tough economic times stress families out. When I was growing up, my parents tried to start a business. It was unsuccessful. We got our car repossessed. I saw the mortgage foreclosure notices. I wrote the letter at 12 years old to my grandmother asking her to send money so my parents could pay their mortgage. It is so stressful for the children, for the parents. And we cannot stand by in these economic times. You heard the supervisor say people feel squeezed. When they feel squeezed, it comes out at home first. And so at a critical level, this is a fight for families. This is a fight to make sure that we have peace in our homes, that we, the basic unit of our core existence, we are not in our house fighting, the parents aren't fighting, the kids aren't stressed out. And so we have to do this. And then, I was always raised to protect our seniors. I was always raised to respect my elders. And the fact that some of these scams are targeting the most senior in our communities, I'm like, there's a special place in HECK for these folks. And so we have a responsibility and the ability to be able to do this. And so I am excited for this opportunity. This will help our families, our seniors, and then the 17200 or the unfair business law, we actually named it the unfair competition law because it's not cool for one business to act imprudently to make more money at the detriment of people who are trying to do it the right way. And so it leads to these unfair business practices. So even our businesses suffer as a result of this. The people who are trying to do the right thing, the businesses who are trying to comply and follow the rules, suffer when the other ones aren't. And so this protects our businesses too. So at every level in our community, this program will benefit all of us.
I'll just add on that we do a lot, and it can be as simple as a cease and desist letter to one company. It could be an abatement of one property that has things going on illegally inside that shouldn't be happening, to going after a business that is out harming their consumers, then to going after an industry that is harming a huge amount of consumers. So the range of what we can do is far, to the single, to the largest. And, in doing this the last 10 years or so, it is the most rewarding work because you make a difference. Even a cease and desist letter will make a difference because no company or no person wants to be publicly shamed. And it changes behaviors and it changes the way people act and people start taking accountability. And it is extremely important. We have a public presence that can make a difference and we should use it that way.
And not to, it's hard to follow these, but I think for me, the way I think of it is, there's always more that can be done. There's always more people that can be helped. And anytime you have an opportunity to use the law for good so that you can actually help members of the community, you need to take it. And if we eventually get to the point where there isn't a need for this anymore, which would be fantastic, then you can shut it down. But I don't think anyone is looking at society right now and saying, these scams or unfair competition or people violating these rules is not a problem. So when you have the opportunity to get more people involved, more people helping, I think you have to take it, and I think it's a great opportunity.
Well, thank you all so much. Can I first have a huge round of applause for our really extraordinary panel. That's right, I like that dog. Dog is on the right track. Thank you all so much for all the work you do and for being here. I want to also give a huge round of applause for our audience. I know a lot of you came to share your stories. And I see a lot of folks in the audience who also do this work day in and day out, fighting for folks who don't have a voice. So thank you so much for your work as well. So thank you all for being here. I'll stick around if you have more questions. And let's make this happen. So thank you guys.